Good morning, happy Saturday. Hope you're all well. I wanted to share something with you today. It's been on my heart, and every single time I do my push-ups, I think of this and I think, should I share it or shouldn't I share it? Is it too much or whatnot? But it's something that a very wise man once shared with me. And at the time I kind of sat on it and thought about it, and here I am all these years later, and it's still in my head, so, and on my heart today for sure. So I'm going to share this with you. It's about struggle. And it is about a lobster. I know you're thinking, a lobster? What the hell does a lobster have to do with struggle? But if I was to ask you if a lobster was hard or soft, what would you say? You'd probably say, well, it's hard, Janice, right? But in actuality, the lobster itself is actually a very soft animal. The outside of the lobster is the exoskeleton, and that exoskeleton is what is hard. And here's the thing, is that a lobster in its lifetime never stops growing. But what grows is the lobster, the soft part of the actual soft animal. The exoskeleton never ever grows, ever. So when you get a lobster and you catch a big lobster, or perhaps you've seen them or whatnot, and it is a big lobster, how did it get there, right? How did it get so big? If it doesn't, they all start off small. So here's what happens. As the lobster grows, it gets uncomfortable and stressed. And it gets so uncomfortable and stressed that it actually will find and seek out a rock and go underneath it, and it sheds that entire shell and grows a new one every single time. But the thing is that each time it grows a new shell, that new shell every single time gets harder and harder and harder. So if you look at a little lobster and a big lobster, the big lobster shell is much harder than the small lobster. So each time that it goes through the process and it gets to that very uncomfortable, stressed stage, it must go and heal itself. It must go find a rock. It must break its shell and regrow a new one. And in breaking that shell, each time that it goes to do that, that shell is harder and harder and harder for its whole entire life. A lobster never ever stops growing. So I guess what the part that he shared with me was, if that lobster was human, that lobster would go to the doctor and say, I'm stressed out or whatever, and the doctor would hand him something, and off he would go, and he'd go back home and take that. And in saying that, it stunts our growth. Not that medicine's bad, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that sometimes we need to go through the stress, we need to go through that, and we need to grow through it, because that's what happens. The lobster grows. So, and our mind is very much like plastic. When you pull a plastic bag, each time you pull that plastic bag, it doesn't go, shrink back down. It's not plastic. It's like plastic, not elastic. So each time that we go through something, and think about something that you've been through, something that you were like devastated with, you know, throughout your life. Think about that thing. And then now think of how you look upon it. It looks different because you grew, because somehow or another you came to terms with it. And maybe it's not as painful, or it's maybe, you know, it's not as angering, but it's different, right? So we are like the lobster, and we grow at our own speed. Everybody goes at their own thing. Everybody's got their own stuff. But, you know, I remember, think about something, for me, my thing was, I remember the first time I taught a class. I was helping out somebody and I taught a class. I was absolutely petrified. I'm like, how the heck am I going to do this? How am I going to lead these people? Well, within a couple of weeks, I was teaching back-to-back classes, and my classes were getting fuller and fuller. I was having 22 people in a class. And if you're listening to this, give me a hands up if you were in one of my classes. Those terrified me in the beginning, but I grew from them. I faced my fears, you know, and it's not always easy. Absolutely, no way. You know, you think about those, you know, stories you hear of people that, you know, the kids that grew up on the streets and they had single mamas and, you know, whatever, mums was always out working or whatever, and, you know, grew up on, I don't know, beans or whatever. You know, you hear those stories all the time, and now they're CEOs of big, huge corporate companies, or they're millionaires and they've made their money on their own. And it's because they refused not to grow. So in our discomfort and in our stress, we have choices. That is where your power is. You own your power. Don't give it to anybody else. It is going to be uncomfortable, but discomfort and stress equals growth. And it's something that I've learned. I used to focus always on the problem. Now, whenever I get stuck in that rut, and it still happens from time to time, swear to God it does. When I get stuck in that rut, you know what I do? I stop and I tell myself, come on, Janice, let's go. And I think, all right, no more focusing on the problem. What's my solution? What does my solution look like? Sometimes it's not, I can't see it in the beginning, you know, but I just know that sometimes it's as much as get up, get dressed, get your butt out of the house and go and fucking do something. And that is how I talk to myself sometimes, because I have to. But in doing that, when I go out and do something, it changes my momentum. It changes my outlook. It gives me my power back. It's like, no, I am not going to do that today. I'm gonna find, if hell or high water, I will get my solution. So if you're stuck and if you're struggling, know this: you are in a very powerful state. You are about to change. Never in my life have I ever met anybody that was intelligent or had made their goals, crushed their goals, whether it was an athlete or a CEO or a millionaire. Never in my life have I ever met one that didn't face hardships, that didn't do that. But the thing is that we can't let them own us. Be a lobster. If it's uncomfortable, grab somebody, talk about it, work through it. Your mind is plastic, not elastic. Your mind will grow. Each and every time you shed your shell, your mind grows. So that was what was on my heart today. And I've been thinking about how to give it to you, and probably didn't say everything I should, but I wanted to share that. I hope you get some good out of it. And cheers, happy Saturday. I love you all.